Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP here from Melbourne. Doesn't matter, it's 4 a.m. here in Melbourne. For this man, I'll get up any time of the day, midnight, 3 a.m., 1 a.m. I've got the fantastic, the fabulous, the man that was there with the Monkees from the start and great friend of Mike Nesmith before the Monkees, Mr. Bill Chadwick. How are you today, Bill?
I'm doing great, Plastic. Really thank you for getting in touch with me. This is a privilege.
Call me Plastic, Bill, because all my friends call me Plastic because we're going back to the Monkees, and there's the first Australian EP that I bought when I was 8 years old, and I bought number 2, volume 2, and I tell you what, I'm one of the biggest Monkees fan in Australia. And I've been a Monkees fan since 1966. The TV show came in 1967, and that's my number one band of all time. And to have you on the show with me is an absolute pleasure, and I feel so close to you, and I just want to thank you for appearing.
Well, listen, thank you very much. And they ought to call you Plastic Fantastic.
That's right. You call me anything you like, Bill. Now, I know you got the guitar there, and the reason you've got the guitar is because you want to show everybody out there the real chords to the song Zor and Zam that you helped write. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, my brother John and I wrote it. I'm going to change my camera angle around here because my face isn't as important as the chords are.
Sure, no problem. Take your time.
You look through all the YouTube stuff, you'll see people that have tried to, learn how to figure out how to play the chords to Zor and Zam, and they're the simplest chords in the world. I used to write a lot of songs in what are called modal chords, which means they don't have a third. They're kind of like the grandfather of what later became known as power chords. Okay, and so what it is this is just a power chord. Can you see if I can get this?
Yeah, we can see it perfect there, Bill.
Yeah, is that a better angle? These two fingers up at the, you can see where they are, and this finger here. So the notes are, they're all E's and B's. So it goes, and then you slide down 2 frets, and then you drop down a string here to where you're, let's see, I'm trying to do this watching the camera.
That's it.
Drop
That's it.
from here.
Unbelievable, Bill. I used to play that.
And the French song was based on something very similar. Just 2 fingers. See you can see what angle you can see to see what they are. Then it was just the finger bridged across there, and that one note here. So you got a bridge across here and this one note. That's all it was. You know, just simple. I worked with very simple chords in most of the songs I wrote.
Amazing.
I always felt that gave people more room to express themselves vocally. If you didn't put too much in, then you didn't have to take it all out later.
I really appreciate you showing them the chords. And now, take a seat, Bill, and I want to take you back. I want to take you back to a photo That's a Henry Diltz photo. To me, it's an iconic photo. And here it is. Tell me about this photo in 1967.
Yeah, that's if I'm not mistaken, and I'm usually pretty close on these things. The time was so wonderful to me that if that was taken in it was taken in Chicago while we were doing background vocals on a piece that, and I can't remember what song it was, but it was a piece that was produced by Chip Douglas. And at the very end of the song, I hold a drumstick up to my face like this and tap on it with my mouth open and go. You can't hear the sound over the microphone now, but if I had a drumstick handy, you'd hear it. It changes as if a drumstick was in a tunnel, and it's kind of like a wah-wah sound, and it gives kind of a little sound through that. And just we used to play around and try to be inventive with stuff. You know, it was always a thrill.
Now, you know, I've got to ask you. I was lucky enough to have an interview with Ron Dainty last week, and he said he auditioned for the Monkees. Did you see him at the audition?
That's a good question. There was so much going on. I saw a lot of people, and I worked with a lot of people that I'd never met before, and I know I'd never met Ron before that. And a good chance that I did, but I couldn't say for sure. And
well, we love Ron, and he was good, and he told me that he auditioned for the Monkees, and believe it or not, I never knew that fact until he told me. So that's pretty unbelievable.
Well, there were a lot of great people that were there to during those auditions. A lot of people that really made it really big, and you know, there was so many people that were in those auditions that were so good. It must have been just a tremendous task for Bob Rafelson and Bert Snyder to decide who they were going to finally choose to be the final four.
Let's go back now.
Let's go back.
Let's focus on what the process was, because you made the final cut. I want to know the story. You told me a story too about what stopped you from being selected.
Well, what really stopped me from being selected was at the time Micky and I looked so much alike, and because when he was Circus Boy, I used to get stopped on the street, and people thought I was Circus Boy, and sometimes I'd play along with it, and you know, just as a goof, even just as a little kid, I goofed on stuff like that. But in fact, during the Monkees, the height of the Monkees. Micky had been invited to the opening of the movie Space Odyssey 2001 at Grauman's Chinese Theater. And Samantha had come over to visit him when they were married, you know, early in their marriage. And in fact, I don't think too many people even knew about it. It might have even been before they were married, but he had come over or she had come over to visit, and they wanted to spend some time together, and instead of going to the premiere, so he gave me the tickets. So I took the girl that I was dating at the time to the awards, and the next day, to the premiere, and the next day in the newspapers was a picture of me and this girl, and I said, Micky has a new girlfriend, and it was really funny. It was, you know, between all of us, it was a big laugh.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So anyway, at the audition, let's go through the process. You didn't know Bert or Bob before the audition, did you?
No, not at all. Mike and I were working for Randy Sparks, and in fact, I had been chosen to scout for some people for Randy for a group that he was trying to put together. This is pre-Monkees. I'm going back a little to give you a little background story. I went to the Troubadour one night, to the Monday night hoot, or hoot nanny is what they called it then, but everybody at the Troubadour called it the hoot. And so we would we'd go. I'd sing, and then I'm sitting there in the audience, and Mike came on with John London, and he did such a great job. I said, "Hey, God, he'd be a natural for this." So I spoke with him afterwards. I said, "Why don't you come down?" He said, "Well, I don't know." You know, I said, "Come down." I said, "You know, you've got really nothing happening right now, and it could give you some opportunities. You can always walk away from it anytime you want to." So he did, and Mike and John became members of the New Society, along with Niles Brown and Michael Murphy, who wrote Geronimo's Cadillac and a few other songs later on in his career, and Owens Castleman and Del Ramos, who ended up being one of the association, and just a whole bunch of really, really talented people. I can't even just quick off the top of my head say who they were, but a whole bunch of us went down to the auditions because Barry Friedman, who was a producer, ended up being a pretty well-known producer in Hollywood, was working for Randy too. And he had seen this ad in Billboard or Variety or something, and he drug a whole bunch of us down there. So we went down there, and initially we had we're each run together and introduced to one of the Monkees if we didn't know them. My first interview was with Davey, and I were interviewed together by Lester Sill and somebody else, I don't remember. Lester Sill was the head of Screen Gems Columbia Music on the West Coast. Wonderful guy. I always thought of him as my mentor. And then from that stage, I had, that was my first meeting with Davey. And wonderful day. We got off just fine, because I think they were looking for, I don't know if other people went through that or not, but I think they were looking for people that could get along together and, that could feel some immediate camaraderie. And so the next step was we're called in individually to be interviewed by Bob Rafelson. And Bob and I originally just automatically hit it off because he had seen Mike and I sing together, and he knew that we could really make a buzz. And the phrase "make a buzz." It's where two singers, when they sing together, it sounds like more than two people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And Mike and I could always make a buzz. Mike was one of those guys. I was one of those guys. Henry Diltz was one of those guys. He did a lot of background vocals. Keith Allison was one of those guys. Harry Nilsson was one of those guys. You sit down with sing. It was like sitting down and like I had the opportunity once to sit down and sing with the Bee Gees. These people just naturally could make that buzz. It wasn't something that they learned. It was something they were born with. It was part of them, And unfortunately, I was blessed with that, so then we went from there. We went into screen tests, and these are goofball screen tests. Well, what killed me really from being in it was the fact that I couldn't act worth crap, But during the interview with Bob Rafelson, we were sitting there across he was on one side of a coffee table and with a camera behind him pointed at me. And I was sitting on a couch. And he reaches over to this bowl of what looked like a bowl of fruit on the coffee table, and he picks this orange up and tosses it to me across the coffee table. And it was about this big around, looked like a big California navel orange, like it's going to be as juicy as heaven, And so he tosses me this thing, and I catch it, and it's not an orange; it's just a hollow plastic ball. I said, "What is it? You guys can't even afford real fruit on this show? What kind of a low budget show is this?" And I said, "Besides, I don't want plastic." And I threw it back to me. He said, "Why don't you want plastic?" I said, "Because in 20 years, we're all going to be up to our knees in waste plastic." And we went through this whole thing because I was really anti-plastic at the time. I still am,
Well, Bill, Did you ever think that in 2020 you'd be interviewed by Plastic EP? How's that?
That's the reason I brought it up. I thought that you might get a kick. That's where I came up with Plastic Fantastic.
Now, listen, I got to tell you, I've got Charles Rosenet. He's just sent me a text now while we're live. He said, phenomenal. I can't even get it out of my mouth, right? He said, great interview. Bill was one of the best convention guests ever at Hartford, Connecticut in 1983. And I'm just saying, he knows that this interview means a lot to me and that I'm one of the biggest Monkees fans. He knows that. And I got to thank Charles because he's such a great person. And I mean, and such a live wire too. And Charles is just a great guy all around.
Charles had been a good friend for a long time. I met Charles for the first time at that convention. I had just a year or so prior to that convention had moved to Connecticut from Los Angeles. And I saw someplace in a local newspaper that the convention was going to be there and that Peter was going to be there. And I thought, well, I'll just kind of drive up there and check it out. You know, at least I'll maybe get a chance to say hi to Pete because I hadn't seen him in, probably 8 years, something like that, maybe. It's been a long time. And Pete and I were good friends because we both came out of folk music, as Mike did. And of course, I'd been in rock and roll and then went to folk music and worked as a gopher for the Weavers for a while, of all things. And there's some stories in that too that I'll tell you sometime.
Bill, can I ask you, is it true that when Mike went to the audition, he was on his way to the laundromat and he had a bag of laundry on his back? Do you remember that one?
Well, I remember, I can believe anything about Mike. Okay. Mike was and still is a real character. He is Mike. There's nobody like Mike Leslie. There's nobody like Micky Dolenz. There's nobody like David Jones. There's nobody like Peter Tork.
Well, there's no one like Bill Chadwick too. I can tell you that.
Heaven help us if there is. One is enough.
Now listen, I've got to get into different details.
If you ever put Micky Dolenz and this is saying 20, 30 years ago, if you ever put Micky Dolenz and me and Bruce Johnson of the Beach Boys together in the same room, you'd think that we were fraternal brothers, fraternal triplets.
Well, I'll tell you what, we may, with a bit of your help, when we're doing an interview again, we might be fortunate enough to get Micky to make an appearance, and we'll look at how you guys look together alongside the screen. That would be unreal.
He was, and now we don't look so much alike. You've changed a lot as you age, but in the old days we looked. We didn't look that much alike. That there was just something about us that everybody would confuse me for him. I wasn't well known enough for anybody to confuse him with me, so but that was cool. I didn't care. Now I've
got to move on to another topic. You're a good friend of Lynn Randell, the Australian singer that was fortunate enough to play the first Monkees tour in '67, and that was huge here. She was like an international artist before her time. And I just want to show you, this is my Monkees Headquarters album, signed by Davy Jones on the front. But I'm very fortunate, once I get this off it, on the back, I've actually got Lynn Randell's signature. It says to Daniel.
Are you set on green screen or something? Because it's
I'm set on something, but you can see it says to Daniel.
Yeah.
Lynn Randell, and it says Monkees 67. I'll read it to you exactly. To Daniel, I was there on the night. Lynn Randell, Monkees tour 67, America. That's what it says, and now you can see it better.
Oh yeah, that's better.
That is better, isn't it?
Lynn was a real sweetheart. She was always right there, right on time and right on key, right on pitch.
Unbelievable. And the fact she was Australian.
Yeah,
The tour was in September '68 here. I
never had any idea how they found her. I would be interested in the story on that, because how she became involved. I mean, she was such a sweetheart, such a fine young lady.
I can find that out. Can I also ask you one question, since we're talking about the Monkees 68 tour?
Yeah.
Do you know why they left the Monkey Mobile, the #1 car here? It arrived after the tour, and then the car stayed here and never went back to the States. Do you know anything about that at all, Bill?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay, I just thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I didn't know that. That's see, I'm learning something here too.
And the other thing I want to say is, let's talk briefly on Jimi Hendrix. Apparently, you helped him with clothes and so forth. Tell me about that.
Well, first of all, I kind of almost met Jimmy at Monterey. I walked through the back dressing area because I had a press pass. Screen Gems had gotten me a press pass, and flew a bunch of us up there in a Learjet to see it. That was quite an experience in itself. But we got up there, and I got distracted by running into a guy that I'd always wanted to meet. Give me a second. Let me grab a picture.
Of course. Anyway, Charles, I appreciate it. Bill and Micky did look alike.
This is a picture you might find interesting. Let me see if I can hold it up to where you can see it.
I see it. Brian Jones.
Yeah. This is let's see, how can I do this?
Right there. Right there. I see it perfect.
That's Brian and I backstage at Monterey Pop Festival. And somebody sent me this photo just a few months ago. I didn't know it existed. And I was so excited that when I got it. But that Brian, meeting Brian was more important to me than because of the fact that we were both into ethnic instruments and the Asian sounds, like George Harrison was interested in. We all had that common interest, and but anyway, that's off to the side. But
Bill, I got to say, there's an important photo.
I don't mean to get off the subject.
No. Bill, speaking about what you're talking about, there's a very important photo where George Harrison is playing the sitar, and you're next to him, and Peter's next to him.
Yeah,
tell me about that.
I took that with I built a special little remote control, little electronic remote control before they were, because I was really into electronics, and like Micky was into crazy things. He's a lot more talented guy than you would ever possibly imagine. The guy can build anything, He was like me.
Gyrocopter. I heard he built a gyrocopter in his house.
Yeah, he had a gyrocopter, yeah. I helped put a few of the parts of that together. We did all kinds of.
Did he actually fly in it?
Yeah. Not a whole lot of times, but he did, yeah. He could do anything he wanted to do. He was like me. You give us a challenge, and we'll either conquer it or we'll hurt ourselves, and quite often both. Bill,
what was it like driving around in the Monkey Mobile? Can you give me a few Monkey Mobile stories? You got no idea how many people love the Monkey Mobile.
First, to get back to Jimi Hendrix.
Yep.
We don't forget that part. Jimmy and I became very close, and we'd go out to during the tour when he was with the Monkees, we'd go out to places like clubs in New York. And one night we went into a club, and we had partaken a bit of some of the colorful background in your behind you, and. We walked into this club, and we walked up to the stage, and one of the guys says, "Bill, how are you?" And Jimmy about fell over. He says, "Where do you know these guys from?" I said, "We used to sing together at the same time. I opened for them at a club called the Insomniac in Hermosa Beach, California. It was a little beatnik club. It was my brain just went dead. The brothers, I can't believe this. The Chambers brothers. It was Willie Chambers, and he says, "I can't believe you know these guys. They were all friends of mine." you know, and just crazy things like that would happen. It's out of the blue. And it was just such a wonderful time. But anyway, Jimmy and I became really good friends, and I opened a little clothing shop called Blind Camille in West Hollywood that you had to walk through the open seating patio of a health food restaurant to even get to it. And Jimmy would come in for stuff. I made a whole bunch of fancy silk shirts for him. And Joni Mitchell was one of my clients, and Graham Nash, and Catwoman. She did a couple of Monkey episodes, one at least Monkey episodes. I blanked out.
Yeah, I know the one you're saying. You're saying Catwoman.
Yeah, I blanked out on her name.
That's all right. I know her name. It'll come to me.
Julie
That's
Newmar.
all right.
Julie Newmar.
That's it. Well done. See your memory. Yeah. Your memory, Bill, is sharp as a tack.
No, it's dull as a rock, but there's still some of it there. You know, just have to.
No, that's been,
it's kind of hard.
Something's telling me the mamas and the papas used to come there. Is that right?
Well, Cass used to come all the time. Cass and I were really good friends, and Cass and Denny and I were good friends, and yeah, and I knew all of the. John Phillips was the vocal arranger for a group that I was in called the Elementary School Band with James Hendrix with CHIS instead of X on the end. He had been one of the big three with Cass, and had sang. You know, he knew all the Mugwumps and all of those people. But anyway, we had a group that recorded it. For Almo Records, and we had a single. One side was "The Other Side of This Life," and the other, I think the A side was "Lollipop Train," which was a Bob Dylan song. And we were one of the first groups to ever use a Moog synthesizer on it. Paul Beaver played the Moog synthesizer on it. And, see, oh yeah, John Phillips and all those. And what were you going into there? I
was just going to say, it's amazing that you had this store, and I mean, you know about Ashman as well, who did the Monkees shirts, the 8-button shirts. He was your friend as well. Did you used to talk sometime about clothes together?
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah. You know, we all had multiple interests. You know, that was a time you could express yourself in many ways. I did some of those fur vests that Sonny and Cher used to wear. You know, all kinds of goofy stuff. Did a few costumes that Bill Tice used on Star Trek, and some clothes that were used in by a girl named June. I can't remember her last name, but she was an extra in a lot of the Monkees episodes. She was Danny Hutton's girlfriend at the time, and that was a show, film, Rock Hudson film, Pretty Maids All in a Row. Just, you know, we would all do anything that we could do just to keep busy and keep interesting. I did promo films. We didn't have videos then. We did promo films. I did 2 promo films for Lewis and Clark Expedition, which was Mike Murphy and Owens Castleman. Chain Around the Flowers was one of them, and I can't remember the title of the other. But those, I borrowed Mickey's camera, his Bouillot. He loaned it to me to shoot it, and also one that I shot on Mississippi Queen by Mountain. Felix Pappalardi and I had been friends back in the Village when I was working for the Weavers, and we'd sing together. He'd play. I had a lute, which I'd play, and he had played the oud, and we'd do real old, very old, ancient folk songs. It was such the whole time. I mean, was just a very, very magical time.
Now, Bill, I got to ask you now. It's appropriate. What was it like in 1966 going around in the Monkey Mobile? Come on.
Oh, that was the craziest of all times. We would be working out at the ranch, the Warner, well, now later became the Warner Brothers Ranch, but
Columbia Ranch.
Well, it had been the Warner Brothers Ranch, and they bought it. I don't know, one way or another. Well, I think Warner Brothers bought everything, and then Sony bought everything from Warner Brothers. But at that time, it was the Screen Gems Columbia Pictures Ranch.
Yeah.
We'd go out there and shoot episodes, like the one with the. It was shot in a Mexican village. Was shot.
I love that one.
Was shot. It was shot in Burbank. A lot of those things were shot in out the Burbank. The ones that all showed water, like the boat sailing around in the water, they were shot at Burbank. In fact, I think Gilligan's Island was all shot.
Yeah, that's right. The pond, yeah.
The pond, same pond. They called it the Berm, and that was a great place. But we'd get when lunchtime would come along when we were out shooting on the lot. Or not on the lot. The lot was the actual studios up in Hollywood. But when we were out at the ranch, we'd pile into maybe 8 of us into the Monkees mobile and drive over to a couple of miles to the original Bob's Big Boy Hamburgers, and have lunch. And the mobs of kids would just surround the car to the point where the waitress couldn't get to us with our hamburgers. It was a lot of fun.
It played a cassette, didn't it? At that time, it was radio and cassette. That's what you played.
Yeah, radio and cassette. That was it. Well, yeah, because we had our 33 1/3 albums. In fact, there's a picture that floats around of me handing Mike a copy of Sgt Pepper. Well, I had been at Tower Records when it opened that morning to get a copy of it, and because I was going to be out at the berm or out at the ranch that day shooting photos, because I would shoot photos, and honestly, I'd sell them to the teen magazines. I took all my negatives to Raybert and got approval on them, because my deal was that I was not going to be one of those scumbag Inquirer type of photographers that I didn't publish anything that put anybody in a bad light. That was because I thought that was very slimy, and I wasn't going to be one of those kind of people. So I volunteered to any photos that I took of the Monkees, that I would bring them in and get approval by Raybert Productions before I would peddle them. And they agreed to that, and I held to it, and they never crossed out a picture, not one. So it worked out good. And we would, let's see, where was I going? It's so hard to do something like this because there's so many different directions you can go with every.
I know, that's right. That's why we got many stories to tell. But Bill, you got to have. If I can ask you this, I'm
a born scatterbrain, so don't.
That's all right. Doesn't matter. I'm loving it.
Don't expect any kind of continuity in anything I say. It's bound to go about 19 different directions.
No, but I like it. It goes everywhere because you're telling the times. But Bill, I got to ask you. I want to know a favorite story about each monkey. A favorite Mike story. A favorite Micky story. Tell me something that no one's heard before.
Wow, that's a tough one.
No, you can take your time. One at a time.
We had so many wonderful experiences with all of them. Less with Peter, because Peter and I didn't spend as much time together as we could have. I remember for Peter, one of the most memorable days was one day up at his house when he and I and Jimi Hendrix and it seems like it might have been Buddy Miles. Just a whole bunch of just great musicians were jamming up there. It was like just a whole.
What's the stories that used to go out that there was nude women swimming in the pool and people sleeping everywhere?
Oh, those, well, no, people weren't sleeping with everybody, but just like nudism wasn't like was not like a forbidden thing. It never has been in Hollywood, you know. If you go back, in fact, there's a TV series going on right now that brings that to the forefront about even all the way back into the 1930s. It was very, very common. You go up to Jackson Brown's house and there'd be several people laying around the pool nude. It was just no big thing. And people weren't, the body was, they don't believe the body was sacred. And, you know, it wasn't.
They were more sun lovers. They loved the sun. That's what it was.
I mean, it wasn't everybody shagging everybody else. It was more like just, you know, you come up and be yourself, whatever makes you comfortable, whatever floats your boat, you know, just do it. Just don't do it to anybody else.
I love it. It's the 60s.
Yeah, it was. It was.
And when I said about Peter's house, I read stories that there's people sleeping in different rooms and like a lot of people stayed there.
Quite often, yeah. Well, he just made his place available to people if they needed a place to hang out for a few days. He was very open to them. He was a very free thinking person and a very deep thinking person. Yeah, Peter was a very, very fine man. I don't think the Monkees, I never thought that Monkees was a perfect fit for Peter. I don't think it allowed him to express himself the way he really wanted to. I think don't get me wrong, don't think I am saying that he didn't do a great job in the Monkees, because he did. But I think that he was foreshadowed to some extent in the Monkees because his talents weren't taken advantage of as well as they could have been. You know, I had an awful lot of respect for Peter. A very, very, very fine person. You know, a very positive person, and I think it was like I said, I think he just wasn't appreciated as much as he could have been.
I appreciate that. Now, we've spoken about Peter. Can we hear a Mike, Micky, and a Davey story? It doesn't have to be your greatest one if you can't remember because you've got too many memories of them. But just tell me a Mike story that stands out, something that happened that no one knows.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mike's story, it was kind of a sad story, but kind of a goofy story at the same time. It was after the Monkees. Mike produced a session of me doing a couple of songs, and no, I don't want to tell that story. tell a happy story. Just a happy story was the first night that Mike and I were singing together at the Troubadour. We sat backstage. We had never, you know, it's like about the first or second time that we'd ever, well, it was the first time we ever sang together in front of people. We had sit down and rehearse at songwriting sessions at the workshop that we had to, the sweatshop workshop that we used to have to do every day. When we were working for Randy Sparks, it was like 6 hours at the office in these groups of 6 to 8 people, which might include John Denver and might include Del Ramos, might include Mike Murphy, me. I was there every day, and Randy Sterling, and we would write songs together. And Mike and I got singing together and stuff, and we said, we're going to go up to the Troubadour one night and sing together. And we did. And we got on stage, and it was so great, the place came apart. And John London was playing bass for us, and Mike and I were singing. And we did it for months and months. And one night we did a song, and this is the night I won't forget. Linda Ronstadt came upstairs and wanted to learn different drum. Well, about 3 days later, her record came out of different drum. And that was the kickoff of her career.
That's amazing. Did Michael use the name Michael Blessing at that point?
He had dropped the name of Michael Blessing and went for Michael Blessing because he said, I don't need that anymore. I am what I am. We were all kind of Popeyes at that time. I am what I am, what I am.
What a time.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. No complaints. And Micky and I, he bought a Moog synthesizer, and I happened to know Moog through some weird circumstances. Paul Beaver had a company in San Francisco, and his business partner was a guy named Bernie Krause. And you've heard of Paul Beaver, I'm sure. He played Moog and played a couple of things on Monkee songs, and a lot of other people's songs. Well, his co-owner of his company was Bernie Krause, who was at one time a tenor in the Weavers, and he was a tenor in the Weavers when I was working as a gopher for the Weavers, so I knew him from the Weavers time, and then got together with them. And Micky bought this Moog, and we went out to Moog together, I think, as I recall. Or maybe I had been out there before with Paul, but anyway, ended up we met Dr. Moog, and both of us had met him, and he got this what was called a mini Moog then, because a Moog then was about as big as you wanted to make it. It was just all these huge boxes about the size that people are scale-wise of the picture that people are probably seeing on their picture, like me from my waist up and it's shoulder to shoulder that's set side by side, module after module after module. And you can have 100 of these modules, and they were all full of oscillators and filters and all this stuff that was run in through MIDI to a keyboard or to a theremin, or maybe several other different types of input devices, and they could make any kind of sound that you could dream. But it wasn't that easy. You had to twist a lot of knobs and fool around with a lot of things to emulate anything that was anything like a real song. And we used to have so much fun with that thing, hours and hours. And it got to be, I'd go over to Micky's house and I'd hog the thing. He couldn't get to it. He finally just almost threw me out of the house. It was totally crazy. We had so much fun with that thing. But like I said, he loaned me that Bugio camera to photograph these things. And one day I'm out there shooting Lewis and Clark expedition, and we were packing up to come home at the end of the shoot. And a gust of wind came up and blew the tripod over, and here goes the lens of the camera, like right into the asphalt. It drove the backing plate of it didn't damage the lens, but the lens mount was driven back into the body of the camera. Fortunately, the film was saved, but it ended up costing me almost the cost of the camera and everything that I would have made on for shooting the film to have Micky's camera repaired. And Micky says, "Okay, just get back to me as soon as you can." And he never hesitated to loan it to me again. I shot 2 more films with it. The one of the other second Lewis and Clark one, and the one of Mountain. Extremely wonderful, generous guy. But I think really the coolest thing was the night that we were sitting around one night. This was really early on in the Monkees, and it didn't actually come to pass until later, but we were sitting around and playing some songs together, sitting on the floor, and just enjoying ourselves. And he and Davey and John London, I think it was, had an apartment together up in the hills someplace. And it's just the very, very beginning. And he heard Zoran Zam. He says, I'm going to record that. And you talk about that site. I was just flabbergasted. I said, please do, and that's a night I'll never forget. Another great night about our time about Zoran Zam, when we were in Australia. We were in Sydney, and we were staying in a hotel that was across the street from where all of the American military would come to. They had a check-in place there when they'd come into Australia for R&R. You know what I mean? R&R, rest and relaxation. Come out of combat for a few weeks and just to kind of get their minds back to where there was something. You could look at somebody without looking through your sights. And the guys, a lot of these guys were pretty torn up. And, we were up on about the 12th to 14th floor. Nobody ever had a 13th floor in a hotel. And we're up there and standing and looking out the window, and realized that these guys are looking up at us, and must have found out that where they were in the hotel or something. And they started singing. We could just barely hear them. There was about 5 or 6 guys down at the bottom of the on this cascading steps in front of this hotel, singing Zoran Zam up to them on the balcony. I was standing up there with them, and before much time went by, it kept happening, and the crowd kept getting bigger and bigger until there were 300 or 400 guys out there singing, and it became louder and louder until it was just encompassing. And we're up there, and I got tears just flowing down my face. It was one of the most moving moments of my life. I mean, that is something that will stick with me forever. Probably more than anything else. All my experiences in my life, as far as someone being moved by something that I had a piece of, or I was a piece of.
Well, I got to tell you, Bill, this came out in 1969. I don't know if you remember it. Zoran Zam are on it.
Oh yeah.
The song Zoran Zam in the corner there. Do you see it at the bottom?
Yep. I
used to play this record so much, and we're at Zoran Zam, and I remember singing it. But also got to tell you, if you see this album, I got it when I was 11 years old. But what I couldn't understand is why there was no picture of the Monkees. And there wasn't until 5 years ago, I found out that this was the actual real cover, but Peter had left the group and they took the photos off before it made it to Australia.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah. Peter just says, I can't do it anymore. It was because of exactly what I was talking about. He just felt like that there was no way he was going to be able to express himself in that mode. And
Now, what about a Davey story?
What's that?
A Davey story.
Oh, Davey. Well, Davey and I just always had a good time. I remember playing. He lived for some time about 2 blocks from me in West Hollywood. He had an apartment up on Fountain, and I was living down on Palm Avenue. At that time, I think it was, I lived about 2 doors from, what's his name, the Eve of Destruction. And then later on, Neil Young lived a couple doors down the street from me. And that's when I talked him into playing guitar on You and I, the song that Davey and I did.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you were responsible for that?
Yeah, that was written on that was written actually on an airplane. And because I was thinking about how I felt about that it was kind of like the Monkees thing was kind of coming to an end, and Davey had the same feelings, and so it kind of, or not that it was that the life of the Monkees, but the show and the big the big time was fading. You know, they weren't getting the support and the kind of promotion that they should have been getting. Screen Gems was trying to move on to the Partridge Family TV show, and they were already planning the Cowsills when they started the Partridge Family. So, you know, there was big corporations. That's the way they work.
Did you know the Cowsills?
No, I never met them. I was offered the opportunity to be a songwriter for them, as I was with the Partridge Family. Lester Sills offered me that opportunity, and fool that I was, I thought I was too cool for that, which was a very bad attitude for me, you know, and I kicked myself in the head for being such an ass at the time, you know.
But I don't blame you, because your loyalty was with the Monkees.
For thinking that I was better than somebody else, and that's you know, that was unlike me. I don't know why. I don't know how that happened, but
there's so many great photos of you on the net.
I let my ego get in front of me, and you know,
there's so many great photos of you on the net.
Oh, what's that? So many what?
There's so many great photos of you on the internet. I'll give you an example. You're standing there with with Micky, and you're hammering a nail.
Oh yeah, yeah. We used to build things together, and we had a lot of fun together. Micky and I are a lot alike. Micky's extremely creative and extremely talented man. You know, he can create just about anything he can imagine. When I kind of slid out of music after the Street, the project that Davey and I did, the kind of indoor mall, clothing mall. I don't know if you know much about that, but
that was a shop, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was a collection of shops. My brother,
is that the same one that was called Zilch?
Well, Zilch was a corporation. Zilch was also a shop that originally there was a shop that Davey and his wife had in New York, and then I don't think it was successful, and he started talking about it. And I had opened my clothing shop in West Hollywood. Like I said, in the back of a health food restaurant, Help. And we got to talking one day about a place that'd be a great indoor mall. I mean, looking for a place to build an indoor mall. It was all hip stuff, and we all thought it was a great idea. And my brother and I started talking about it, and we said, well, he had helped design Disneyland. My brother John, who wrote with me, he was an extremely talented guy too. He invented Cecil the Sea Serpent from the old Time for Beanie television show. That was a puppet that he created, a character.
That was a great show, Cecil and Beanie. I used to watch it.
Yeah, well, Cecil the Sea Serpent was an invention of my brother John. And he and Bob Clampett. I grew up hanging out when I was like 4 years old, hanging out with my brother and Bob Clampett and Louis Farini and all the great animators of the 1940s. And that was quite an experience too. Yeah, I just been in the right place at the right time a lot of times. Like I said,
you've got some amazing stories, Bill. I've got to tell you, amazing stories. And what I want to do is, as I said, your stories are so amazing. We've been going now nearly 54 minutes. It's totally amazing. So what we're going to do is, I think we want to leave everybody on the edge of the seat now for episode 2. And I just want to thank you so much, Bill. And from Plastic EP, and I'll let you take us away.
Plastic, it was great. It was great. What else can I say?
I loved it, Bill.
And we'll do it again whenever you want.
Thank you, Bill. Just stay there. And as I said, see all you Monkey fans out there. And don't forget, Plastic EP. Peace. Don't forget Plastic EP. Sorry.
Don't forget Plastic EP. And it's time for us to pack it in.
That's it. And don't forget, Plastic EP and Bill Chadwick. We love the Monkees, don't we, Bill?
We sure do.
That's it.